Hey everyone, in today's video, I will go over why I think Smash JT is an incredibly lazy YouTuber and how after all this time, he is still extremely bitter and jealous of Pat Contri. I've noticed over the last few months, our friend Smash JT has been uploading content on nearly a daily basis. I always get a chuckle when I see his thumbnails, you know, the ones where he has that goofy face, and I assume that he's either really angry or maybe he's very constipated and can't push anything out. I do find it funny when you see those, not too many of them do it, but a few gaming YouTubers who think that if they do the weird exaggerated face, that this will attract so many views. Like seriously, would you go outside in public or hang out with your friends and make those faces? I am sub to Smash, but haven't really checked out many of his videos, to be honest. It's my opinion that he's being like one of those typical YouTubers who looks at what's trending every day and then just try to pump out a video as fast as possible, doing little to no work and just copying somebody else who did all the work in hopes that they can get some cheap, easy views riding the coattails of the more popular channel. A good example of that is recently when Gerard the Completionist was exposed by Carl Jopes in Mudahar. They did a lot of work on themselves. Like, they came up with the original content. It was very popular. So, of course, somebody with less talent has to jump on it. And I wouldn't mind if it was just someone giving their angle or opinion or trying to, I don't know, doing a breakdown of those original videos, but I always find it funny when these people, like Smash, or Review Tech USA, he does that all the time too, they try to make it seem like they're delivering the news, like they came up with the news. It's just, in my opinion, it's super lazy. We all know that Smash has an axe to grind with Pat in the CUPodcast. Pat and Ian made Smash look like a complete fool for several years, and it appears that Smash cannot just take the L and move on. So let's take a quick look at his hit piece to expose Pat and why I think it's a lazy and an embarrassing video.
Pat the NES punk is kind of falling out of relevance these days. Not that he really had much ever anyways, but he's kind of winded down on making his CU podcast. The Intellivision Amico drama saga is kind of going into the rearview mirror these days, and no one's really talking too much about that stuff. So what is Pat doing right now to keep himself relevant? Well, he's been working really hard on a book.
Wow, sounds like someone is projecting here. You think Smash maybe is making this video to keep himself in the spotlight and try to get relevance? I don't know if we're talking about Pat. Anyways, so Smash's first bad and lazy take is that he thinks that Pat is writing this book to keep himself relevant and to keep his name in the spotlight. Doesn't really make much sense considering Pat wrote an NES book, an SNES book over the last 8 years, and he's been working on this book for the last 2 or 3 years. And that was during the same time, during the height of the CUPodcast versus Amico drama. So I don't think he's making this book to keep himself in the spotlight. That wouldn't make much sense. It makes more sense that he's continuing the series. I assume the last 2 have been successful financially for him. So why wouldn't you make a third one? And I'm not a huge YouTuber. I'm kind of aware of this the landscape these days. Over the last year, maybe Smash hasn't done the research or he doesn't know this because he isn't a big YouTuber or he doesn't really look into anything aside from just assuming everything. But over the last year or two, lots of YouTubers have dropped out or cut back or changed how they've been doing videos because the AdSense revenue has dropped considerably. One of my favorite nerd channels that I watch on YouTube is the 8-Bit Guy. And he has a real channel with a real following. And recently he discussed the big drop-off for him on the AdSense revenue and the overall views and how it's impacted him quite a bit. And thankfully, he has a Patreon and other ways to generate income. But I've read about him and many others where things have dropped off 50, 60% from what they were last year or the year before. So it's possible, I won't speak for Pat, I don't know, but a lot of people are cutting back on how much they're doing on YouTube. So this is where Smash will go in on his bad take about using emulation to write a book. Now this angle I think is terrible and it's just lame. If I had a vendetta against Pat, I would probably pursue the fact that in the Kickstarter text it says each game will be given a full review. If you look at the 7 or 8 examples that are provided in the Kickstarter, you would see that the for each of the games it's more of an overview than a detailed comprehensive review. I would probably go with that angle. But since Smash was so lazy to he didn't even bother showing any of the reviews or going over them, how about we take a look and see what it was showing? So let's take a look at this NBA Hangtime review. If you look at the top, it gives you the basic details of the game, when it was released and who made it. You get about 6 screenshots and the cartridge art, I guess you would call it. Maybe I would complain, hey, why don't you show the cover art of the game? That would be nice. But if I won't read out the full text of what he has pasted below there, but 80% of it is the review. I'm using quotes. And if you look at it, it's just mostly describing what the contents of the game, and how it plays, and the details of what the game is all about. And the last 20% of the text where it says reflections, that's more of the reviewer talking about their memories of the game, the impact it had at the time, and any interesting facts. And if you look through all the different examples, I'll show on screen a few of the examples. You can pause if you really want to read them. Most of them follow this format. You know, they might give a tidbit or two of what's good, what's bad, but for the most part, it isn't a detailed review of each game. It's more of just an overview. So that's why maybe the Kickstarter text is misleading, because it's more of a guide, like an encyclopedia, which gives you tells you about the game. It's not going deep onto reviews of how good or bad the game is itself. So it's like this 20-minute video he's about to do, like for the rest of this video, is completely irrelevant, because he makes it seem like using the emulator makes such an impact just talking about what the game has for content and using a few screenshots. Had Smash taken the time to look, maybe show what was shown in the book, or maybe even wait until the book is actually out, he wouldn't look so silly. But him whining and assuming everything and complaining makes him look like a Tallarico. Jeff Tallarico, is that his new name? I don't know, but I don't know. It's just a really bad take.
I'd let this go. I'd let it slide. Except for what's transpired since Genovi's video, calling Pat out about this, and did an excellent job.
So this video, he's going to piggyback off what Genovi did in his video from, a year or two ago, and try to fabricate some kind of controversy. See what I did there? Contri. So you're going to fabricate some type of controversy of Pat in his book using emulators as if it's a big deal, when nobody really cares. Now let's sidetrack just before continuing on this video. I like Genovi. I just want to go over that video just a little bit, just very little. I used to chat with him once in a while, and he was a really nice guy, and maybe still is a nice guy. He was a positive guy in this community, which is rare since most people are really, really bitter and grumpy. But I thought his video on Pat was poorly put together and seemed more like a guy that had an agenda, and that he disliked he disliked Pat, and that he reached quite a bit for a lot of his points that he made in the video. Had he had people who were willing to go on camera or on record where they talked about their experiences of Pat being vindictive or trying to sabotage other booksellers, then it would have added a lot more weight to that video, or credibility. But when you make a video and say, well, some guy told me that Pat is a jerk-off and he did all this bad stuff, and you don't have the receipts or the proof, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to... Not that I can't believe it, but I'm not going to believe it until there's at least some sort of proof. I could just make up something and say, hey, I heard Pat Contri goes to conventions and steals everyone's games. Like, I can't just make accusations like that. So that's why I didn't think that video was really good. And like, I normally I don't like to discuss what I have in private chats or DMs, but since Smash seems to lack any self-awareness, I'll share a story. I remember I was in a group chat containing Genovi, the same guy that Smash is using as a source. And I remember him telling me a story that, because he was in the scene with the people who went to conventions, the retro gaming scene, and telling a story where a group, or a large amount of the people who go from the one con to another, used to gather together and watch Smash JT videos so they can all laugh at him and make fun of him because they thought he was an absolute moron and looked ridiculous on when he was on video. So it's kind of funny because in Genovi's video, he uses Smash to voice Pat's voice, and it's like a double troll job. And I thought, bravo to Genovi, that's pretty funny. But I do find it funny that Smash thinks that, like, he's like, oh, Genovi's I'm on Genovi's side. We're two of a kind. I'm like, Genovi thinks you're an idiot. just like most of the other community does too. And no, it's not nice. I shouldn't say that type of stuff. It's mean, but sometimes the truth hurts and whatnot. So getting back to Genovi, like he shared similar stories of what he did in his video about Pat, and I wouldn't doubt it. Like I'm not going to deny, Pat. There's petty Pat. He even jokes about it in his own videos. But unless you have people giving, credible witness statements of them saying they've seen it themselves, it's kind of hard to believe. And like when Genovi used Larry Bundy is a complete joke. Like who's going to actually believe anything that guy says? It's kind of hard to accept it. So sorry about that sidetrack, but my main point is I find that Smash using Genovi in his video and the basis of his complaint funny because Genovi thinks that Smash is a moron, and so does everyone else. Like I don't want to pile on the guy. Most people like laugh at the monkey, like Smash is a monkey. I don't see many people aside from I think Master System Marceau was the only person who actually liked the guy. And I don't hate Smash or anything, but like I do find it comical what he does on YouTube. But let's get back into this.
In this, we see some real insight as to the true fraud that Pat really is. The questionable ethics behind Pat the NES Punk's latest project has ignited controversy for its reliance on emulators, a detail conveniently omitted from its promotion. This oversight, or rather deliberate confusion towards customers, has not only sparked accusations of deception once again with Pat.
The questionable ethics. Who is questioning these ethics? And the ignited controversy from who? Why not provide examples of where this has ignited controversy? All I've seen is the video from Genovi, who admits he has a beef with Pat Contri, yourself, and a third person who we will learn about shortly. How is this deliberate confusion? I assume you're referring to obfuscation. Show us where in the Kickstarter that Pat is making everything difficult to understand.
But also highlighted his hypocrisy, given his previous critiques of others in the gaming sphere. Shocking, I know, but I need to call this guy's ass out. If he's going to call out Brett Weiss for not paying his writers that wanted to volunteer to be part of Brett's book because that made Brett a terrible person.
Point is, I pay my writers. I show them the proper respect when it comes to this. That bothers me as a writer. It should bother you too. And if your argument is going to be that your publisher doesn't want to pay them, don't do your fucking book then.
Then what does using emulators in your unofficial guide make you?
He brings up Brett Weiss and tries to somehow merge this issue with emulation with the incident that Brett had with Pat over the last several years. Did Smash contact Brett Weiss for his opinions on the book? Or maybe do a short interview for more insight on Brett's situation with Pat? Nope, that would take effort, and Smash is far too lazy to do any of that. He could have taken the time to look at what Brett wrote, I think it was a year or two ago, about talking about his story with Pat, and goes into great detail. What is hilarious is that after Smash released this video, Brett Weiss himself wrote about the video, and let's take a look. So this is on Brett Weiss's webpage. It says, my buddy Smash JT did a video recently on Pat Contri's forthcoming N64 book. He mentions me in the video as someone Pat had unfairly insulted on his YouTube channel and podcast, which I appreciate. Thanks, Smash. But just to be clear, I wasn't consulted for the video, and I've never commented on Pat's N64 book before this blog post. I've also never commented on his and his contributing writer's use of emulation to write the reviews. I figured that was his business and didn't really affect me. I've discussed other retro gaming books by other writers on my blog and my YouTube channel, and I don't really feel comfortable commenting too much on the N64 book until I take a look at it. Well, look at that. The guy that everyone makes fun of, Brett Weiss, bought my book and kind of make him... People give the impression that he's slow or something like that. He's going to wait until he reads the book before he gives judgment. That sounds like what a normal person would do. As far as emulation in general is concerned, it makes sense for rare and expensive games, but less so for common ones. Those should be fairly easy to purchase, and later resold if needed to recoup the money, or at least borrow and play on original hardware. I love physical media, and original cartridges are always preferable. But it is what it is. Regardless, if he wants to review games using emulators, that's his prerogative. And not really my concern, it's actually a common practice. Wait. It's Author Brett Weiss says it's actually a common practice. Oh, geez. So this has been done in the past and no one's ignited controversy about this? Oh, weird. It's certainly not a scam to write a gaming book using emulation, as Smash JT's video states. It's not a perfect solution for games you don't have access to, but it is a solution. My issues with Pat run much deeper. And you can read the rest of it. It doesn't go, like, I won't read the whole rest of his blog post. But his issues with Pat is completely different. It's not to do with the ethics of using emulation. So Brett Weiss himself sees nothing wrong with emulation and doesn't consider Pat pulling a scam. Good job, Smash. Good job on making yourself look like a complete moron. Had you taken any effort into making a real video and reached out to Brett, you maybe wouldn't have embarrassed yourself here. Well, so far, since Smash's two sources have been a swing and a miss, maybe the next source Smash pulls will be from a highly respected and credible source.
And shout out to Sweet and Tender Hooligan for providing some amazing insight and screenshots.
Sweet and Tender Hooligan? Seriously? Really, Smash, you're going to use this guy as a source? Sweet and Tender Hooligan is the same guy that was banned from several Discords because he is either mentally disturbed or an extremely lonely troll. Here, how about we take a look at a few of the heavily censored screenshots that from his contributions to some of the Discords. You're going to tie your boat to this guy? He was obsessed with posting AI-generated nude photos that he created of Tommy Tallarico in weird sexual positions. This deranged fellow who is obsessed with Pat Contri and Tommy Tallarico to a point where he makes photos of tentacle monsters having or violating a naked Tommy Tallarico who is generated with both a male and female genitalia. Good job on finding a credible source, Smash. Good job. Like, this is the bottom of the barrel you can scrape here.
So he gets in front of it and it's like, yeah, I'm using emulators. All these writers are using emulators with me. It's not a big deal. It's N64. It's an old system. Who cares? For true gaming aficionados, the charm of gaming lies in its authenticity.
I don't see why this is some kind of taboo. The only community that is extremely firm on using non-emulation is the speedrun community, for which it makes sense since you want everyone on an even playing field. How often do you see on Twitch or YouTube someone playing retro games using an emulator? Very often. And do the people who watch these streams get into an uproar because the streamer is using emulators? No, because nobody cares.
There are unique quirks of the hardware, and the tangible presence of the actual cartridge that the game comes on gives the end user the authentic gaming experience meant to be played by the developer.
I wonder where Smash copied those quotes from, because I can't see him coming up with that himself. And this is where you can tell that Smash really isn't a gamer or very knowledgeable about emulation or anything hardware. Here would be a good part where he would explain why emulation isn't as good as original hardware. Not just a general, emulation sucks. Explain why it sucks. He doesn't know why because, well, he didn't look into it and just reads what, some of the purists online who complain about N64 emulation not being 100% perfect. I'll give you a good example. The Switch Mario Anniversary Collection, like the one with the Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, for the Mario 64, it's using an N64 emulator. And on the Nintendo Switch Online, it uses a mediocre emulator, but it does use an emulator. And I would consider, Nintendo pretty stern on having quality control on their first-party products, what they put out. And if Nintendo thinks that the emulators are good enough for the millions and millions of people that they're selling it to, why would anyone complain about a book using an emulator? It doesn't make sense.
Pat's failure to use authentic, genuine N64 cartridges to review games for his book, paired with his reliance on emulation and the assistance of other people writing it with him, is a betrayal to those who hold these values as being the utmost of importance, undermining the trust and credibility of the entire gaming community.
You are assuming that the book will post false information in it. Why not wait until the book releases, just like Brett said? Read the book, and at that point out all the inaccuracies. There's a whole lot of assumptions from yourself being based on nothing at all. A betrayal because Pat is using an emulator to play games and being dishonest with his audience by not disclosing this? Wait a minute. I think I remember something from only a few years ago. Somebody playing a bunch of games and not disclosing that they were being emulated.
So the idea of a family-centric game console that's high quality and has short bursts of really fun games is an intriguing concept to me personally. And when I played it, it worked out well. I didn't have any issues. I didn't notice any lag. I didn't notice any problems per se. Nothing that was like game-breaking bugs or showstoppers, things like that. No, it was fun. And like I said before, it felt like it was, for the most part, ready.
So you mean like when you were playing Amico games emulated and not on real hardware, and then not disclosing this to your audience, and you're calling Pat a hypocrite?
The situation becomes even more glaring when you take a step back and think about the other things he said about other writers in the past, something I've covered previously, how Pat crapped all over Brett Weiss and made him sound like a horrible human being because he wrote a book with other people and used people for volunteers to write with him, people that actively wanted to participate in that. Pat was saying, no, that's a bad thing. I pay my writers.
See, Smash could have had a decent point here about Pat being a hypocrite, but instead of doing a well-crafted original video, he takes the lazy way out and just tries to push this lame emulation angle. See, if I had the vendetta against Pat and wanted to get him, I would take the effort and maybe contact Genovi and find out the names of the people who had bad experiences with Pat. Maybe reach out to Brett Weiss, see what he has to say, and I would craft an original video where you give new information to people, and it would give a reason to people to watch your video. But no, instead, you take the lazy way out because, well, you put low effort and no effort into your videos. It'd be the same if I were to try to make a video like this video on Smash. Instead of just putting some effort into crafting a video together, I would just go make a video saying, oh, I think Smash AT is a loser, and then find an internet troll and go, hey, this Darius Truxton says you're a cuck loser, so that must mean you're a loser. It's like you come off really amateurish here. It's really bad. I don't think you're going to win too many people on your side with videos like this. Now, I'm not trying to white knight for Pat. He's far from being some kind of perfect person, the absolute pinnacle of retro gaming YouTubers. It is, in my opinion, that Pat is really good playing the guy with the chip on his shoulder talking about the bullshit happening in the gaming scene. If I were to make a hit piece on him, like you're trying to do, it'd be easier to go after the low-hanging fruit, like Pat's attempts at cringe comedy that he does in his videos. Like, it's really cringy. Or talk about how he and Ian come off as smug. Pat himself isn't a guy I think that is deeply knowledgeable in gaming post, the N64. Many times it's clear that Ian knows much more about gaming than he does outside of the NES. I would say they are not exactly endearing at times or not very likable. I can totally see why many of the people are off-put by them because they come off as being elitists. And I've seen the comments. A lot of people dislike Pat and Ian, and good for them. There's nothing wrong with that. I've recently seen some videos from these two guys. I think it's Red Cow that do offer a similar style show of the CUPodcast, and they come off far more likable, despite the guy on the left looking like he's coming off a 3-day bender with those bags under his eyes. Not everyone on YouTube can come off as likable and friendly with massive sex appeal, kind of like this fella. My main point is that if you want to battle the guy, this emulation angle is weak and you come off looking foolish. He has other flaws that you can easily dissect, but I assume you're just too lazy to do that, or else you're just not creative. Not everyone can do this. Now back to the video.
Pat speaks out of both sides of his mouth with an obvious agenda that he is clearly determined to reach. Brett's dedication writing his books speaks volumes about his integrity, a trait that Pat clearly lacks. I've covered that plenty in the past. This guy is a hypocritical fraud.
This video feels like Smash is saying, I'm mad at Pat, so believe everything I say without me needing to prove my accusations, and I'll just whip up this half-hearted rant, and hope that I get hate views or that people will just believe me blindly.
First off, Pat argues that it's okay to use emulation because it's akin to reviewing a movie at home on your TV instead of going to the theater and watching it on the big screen. What kind of logic is that? It's like arguing that you can only review movies if you watch them in the theater. It's silly.
Well, this is hilarious because when I was watching Smash's video for the first time, my immediate thought was, well, back in the late 90s when the N64 was a thing, how could we accept anyone's reviews for movies? Back in those days, you would either rent or buy a VHS, which is degraded, or if you're lucky, a DVD. But a lot of them were in full screen, or what they would call pan and scan, and a lot of people were listening via stereo audio, not surround sound. Using Smash's theory, we wouldn't be able to determine if a movie was good unless we went to the theater and watched it in its full widescreen with full surround sound. I'll even do one more. Are we going to factor in CRT TVs, type of cable being used, the wear and tear on the N64 controller, which we all know that the stick would break frequently, revisions of the consoles or the games themselves, user TV setting preferences? Are we going to talk about maybe using modern TVs with or without retro team? So many variables can change the experiences for someone playing these games one way or another. I remember when we got a brand new CRT TV and I started using better cables, the image was significantly better. And I remember playing, when you play on a brand new controller, it's a lot different than playing on one of those controllers that have been heavily used from many hours of Mario Party playing. So there's so many variables. Is Smash even aware that back in the day, that video game magazines in the early days of the internet, that reviewers would review unfinished products? So it wasn't even the complete experience that you would get when you were at home. Hell, even nowadays, games come out with day one or week one patches that make changes to the game. This point that Genovi made that Smash is latching onto is only really relevant if he were to read this N64 book and had Pat wrote a complete lie, such as, this game runs at 3 frames per second and crashes, but on the original hardware, it never did this. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Because it's the easiest and most simplistic way to do all these things. Instead of doing the hard work required to make this thing as good as possible, it's being done as fast as possible to make as much money as possible.
Are we talking about Pat's book or Smash's YouTube channel? Because doing lazy rants on a daily basis using other people's material and thoughts in hopes that you can catch some momentum off of others' success sounds like someone trying to take the easy way for quick success.
Trying to get screenshots and accuracy for that looked like the 90s for 400 games. N64 emulation is the f***ing pits. It's the pits.
Right.
And it's not going to get close to 100% anytime soon. On my computer, I couldn't even run Rogue Squadron at a stable frame rate. And my graphics card's not that old.
And Pat's response to this on Discord was hysterical. He makes every excuse possible known to man to make it sound like it's okay now. That's to get games to run smoothly, without crashing, things like that. Context matters. The games play exactly the same once working. No, they don't, dude. You are lying, and you know you are.
This could be a good point for Smash, but what games are known to run shitty on emulators? What did Pat write about them in his book? Pat is wrong about saying that it's the pits. It isn't that bad anymore. He is correct about when the games do work, which is most of them, they play nearly the same. Smash is trying to make it seem like every game on the emulator runs at a different frame rate, different draw distances, clipping, the gameplay is completely different, and which would then make every review invalid. It's also possible in some of these reviews that the games were not even played using an emulator at all, because the reviewer could be writing it off based off memory. I assume the screenshots would still need to be done, but like for myself, I haven't played Chrono Trigger in 20 years, but that game is 100% burned into my head. So I would need to replay the whole game to review how it played back then.
And if you're going to be using emulation to run these games, you have to disclose that to the audience. If anything, sure, having it in the preface would be great, but you want to have this on the cover of the book. Emulated N64 Guide, where I review all these games that have been emulated.
Why would he write Emulated N64 Guide? Nintendo never wrote on it the cover's incomplete beta games Nintendo Power. That's confusing and stupid. It doesn't make sense. And also, emulation can also increase the user's experience. Usually people associate the emulating games with the game running better and cleaner, so it could make the experience even better.
Pat, did you consider partnering with a collector and borrowing the games for each reviewer? Surely they at least have an N64 console if they're a credible games reviewer, which is a fair question and true. Someone who's going to be reviewing games and wanting to partake in the N64 guidebook and making it the ultimate unofficial guidebook would want to partake in this, would probably have an N64 because they probably have a passion for it. And what does Pat say? What you suggested would be a logistical nightmare and unnecessary.
What Smash is suggesting is that Pat make his book as a collaboration with a group of people rather than him taking lead and making the book and using contributions from people who are paid or unpaid. Borrowing a full collection of games may work if everyone who's writing the book is in the same town, which I don't think it is. It shows that 20 people are doing reviews for this book. So what Smash is suggesting is that Pat find a collector who's willing to part with his full collection and ship it to over 20 different cities, and that Pat should monitor and keep track of each game and ensure that they are shipped back to the original collector. Either doing that or a much more difficult thing of logging which reviewers own which games and have a complete inventory of where everything is with everyone. To do all this, because Sweet and Tender Hooligan, Smash, JT, and Genovi aren't 100% satisfied, makes absolutely no sense, and it's just a ridiculous idea.
Right there, Pat tells you that he doesn't care about the authenticity of his book. He just wants to get this thing printed and put it out there for the masses to make another 30 or 80 or whatever $100,000+ off of selling this book, and to claim that he is now an accomplished author that's made all these other books, and look at him making this N64 book that, wait, doesn't Pat not even like N64? Pat has made it abundantly clear that he favors the NES library personally and cares very little for the N64. If anything, he's been caught crapping on it on the CUPodcast about why he doesn't like how the games advanced the way they did and how N64 just never really clicked with him.
Someone sounds jealous. So what are you saying is that because Pat doesn't like the N64 that he shouldn't make a book about it? So why are you making a video about Pat despite the fact that you don't like Pat? Isn't that hypocritical? Wouldn't it be logical that if Pat made a book about the NES, that his third book would cover the next system, the N64? I think it's safe to say that Pat's next book, if he decides to do another one, would be on the GameCube. Are you expecting him to try to sell a book on his Kickstarter by saying, I don't really like the N64, it's like my fourth favorite console, but you should come buy my book anyways? It makes no sense. Like, who would do that? Like, use your brains. Like, there's zero common sense there. And not every book is about a passion product. Some people write books or make YouTube videos just to inform people.
Pat takes a very flippant approach to the customer. In reply to Sweet and Tender Hooligan saying, Pat, will it be stated in the book that emulation is used? To which Pat replied, maybe. I don't know. Nobody cares? Nobody cares if emulation is being used for the unofficial, full-on compendium, the compilation of all N64 games being covered in one succinct manner. They don't care how they're being covered? Who do you think your audience is, Pat?
This would be where, if you were not lazy, and you would actually go out and try to find people who do care about the emulation issue that you're bringing up, outside of the three people that have an axe to grind with Pat, this is where you could do it. This book has several people in the community whose names you can see in the Kickstarter and who will be contributing to the book. Don't you think if the emulation was an issue, that someone like Audi Sorley, the guy who works for Limited Run and who has contributed to Digital Foundry and is highly regarded as an elite preservationist and is a very well respected member of the community, wouldn't you think he would decline Pat on writing in his book if he thought this was an issue? Wouldn't you think Pat's buddy Frank Cifaldi from the Video Game Preservation would raise a stink if he thought, hey, why are you misleading people with emulated reviews? They don't, because it's a clear, weak attempt of a few people like yourself to make something out of nothing at all. Just because you don't like Pat. It really comes off childish.
And that's why I'm making this video. Pat's actions have cast a long shadow of doubt to many people over the years. And people buying this book.
Which people? Most of the critiques that I've seen online about Pat is about his personality and people thinking that he's a dickhead and petty. His solo content is critiqued because of the cringe, but I don't see people shitting on his books and the integrity of them. So to wrap up this video, here are my final thoughts. I don't think Smash JT is a terrible person. What I see is just a very insecure guy with a thin skin, who is still very bitter that Pat holds a W over him from the Amico debacle. Clearly Smash is extremely desperate to become a YouTube star. By pumping out those low-effort shit videos, it might get him to a certain point because the algorithm does like a lot of content. But the only way to really get big on YouTube is to produce original videos which takes a lot of effort and original thoughts, and I'm not sure if he can do this or not. I assume he'll watch this video because he likes watching stuff about himself, and he'll probably play the victim, and good for him if that's the case. I just don't understand why he bothers putting out these lame videos day in, day out. It's not really working. It's not like he's like the other members of the cult. What I said a few, I think on a live stream once, was that most of the members of the Amico cults tagged along because they had nothing going on in their lives. They live sad, lonely lives, nothing going on, probably grew up very sheltered or without much acceptance or friends, and that when they hitched themselves to the Tommy Tallarico bandwagon, they're trying to fill an empty void that they never had in their life. And I had said back in the day that only Retro Bro, and I think it says Smash AT, were the exceptions because they actually seemed to have normal lives and were just using Tommy just to hope to get their channel big. And I would like to think that's still the case. Like, Retro Bro has moved on. But you have a wife and kids. Why would you put videos on a daily basis of you having diarrhea phase, trying to get big on YouTube, which pays nothing at all? Like, what's the point? I don't get it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you embarrass yourself on a daily basis in hopes that you can get a few $100 or $1,000 off of YouTube? Maybe you're poor. I don't know. Either way, it's just pretty lame. So that's all I got today. I don't really want to rant anymore. It's going on pretty long. In the near future, I'll have a few more videos. I have a Tommy Tallarico video coming up. Until then, stay smashing. Whoa!